Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Kyrie is still not in the Highlands for this video, and yes, you still have to deal with the electronic fish that my dog is playing with on the floor because he really loves his fish. We're going to talk about urban solutions, urbanity. And someone posts, cities are cool, people want to live in them, we should build more dense housing so that it stays affordable even though more people are moving into the cities. And so I realize that there's a positive desire to this idea. There's positive desire to get people into the cities to have better lifestyles or something, but it's completely backwards and wrong. Ecologically, it's horribly wrong. Psychologically, it's horribly wrong. Okay? And so this is where I get in with the doomer optimists and stuff much more. Cities aren't cool and people don't want to live in them. Cities have things that people want to access, and I shouldn't say that as a universal. It's just that cities have a lot of disadvantages, and the way we are designing our cities is pretty bad. Okay, I tend to find that there are a lot of issues with people who live in cities that they don't even notice. So we should build more dense housing. Well, actually, no. That's the quote from the tweet. We should build more dense housing. No. Overly dense housing is bad for a whole slew of reasons, all right? One of the main ones is the ecology, pollution, okay? Systems, ecology systems, pollution systems. You just can't effectively manage the massive amount of input and output in a small space of that kind of density without structurally impossible, maybe just extremely difficult, but functionally impossible, overuse and pollution problems. And that goes down to overuse of the air, okay? I mean, just the air is a huge problem. Airflow indoors that is less than 5 or 6 TAE per hour is just not healthful. Okay, TAE is total air exchange. If the volume of air in this hotel room does not change over a couple times an hour, preferably 5 or 6, but at least a couple times an hour, that cubic feet of air moving, it's not good for you. You're gonna have mold spores, you're gonna have crap from dead skin, you're gonna have dust mites, it's not good for you. It's never going to be good for you. It's bad for your lungs, it's bad for your skin, it's inflammatory, it's bad. People don't realize how bad it is, but it can be a noticeable, trackable, this is real science, trackable effector of inflammatory diseases, all the way down to arthritis. Your arthritis can get worse because you live in a low air exchange environment. This is true. So what do? You put more people into more dense towers, well, there's only so much air around. It's not infinite, okay? This is one of the things HVAC engineers actually have to deal with, is realizing how much airflow is required, how cubic feet, huge fans and everything. And HVAC is not an answer either in these, especially in dense housing areas, because HVAC has to deal with the problems of humidity and dead skin particles and other stuff that comes out in the air and the dust and everything, and the filtration ends up with mold spores and you have mold problems, and it's not good. You need fresh air, okay? Density doesn't work for that, and that's just the air. That's probably one of the easy ones. It's a very limited example. General waste, just trash. Trash alone is a huge deal. Sanitation water. The denser your urban area, the less you have an ability to adequately deal with human waste, water waste. Water is used as the basic cleaning agent of cities to get rid of everything, and it's a really abusive and unsustainable water system. It is. Most of our ecological problems right now, most of our environmental problems really come down to water issues, water cycle disturbances. You can't just urbanize that. Dead skin, dead hair, there's just so many problems with micro and macro ecology when you get into dense urban housing like that, and just increasing that because you think it's good for the planet. It's not good at all. Even your personal environment control gets more difficult and energy intensive and dirtier. You can't do adequate passive solar cooling. Passive solar cooling is possible, but not in a dense environment. You can't do it. Heating, well, you can't do passive solar heating either. You're not with that level of density. You just don't have the mass or the solar exposure to do that much. That kind of thing is actually very real. But even just your personal environment, your apartment, your little cubicle, your little box, the heat, the cooling, the humidity, your exhalations, the control gets more difficult, energy intensive, and ecologically, environmentally dirtier the more you have density. So let's not forget that cities and dense agriculture, these things go together, are the sole reason we have epidemic, pandemic, disease in our species. Okay? It's a structural problem. It's just part of agriculture in cities. That's why we have epidemic disease. All right? And the primary alleviation of much of this, the sanitation problems, the waste problems, the cleanliness problems, the epidemic problems, comes down to water-based hygiene. We disturb entire water systems for entire continents just to feed cities. And it doesn't need to be that way, because if you undensify the cities, it gets a lot easier, because then you can have water courses and water systems. Just as important, but not as obvious, is neurochemistry and psychology. Just as big a set of problems. The more dense urban hive housing that you build, the fewer means of egress, walking around, outdoorsness, transportation, independent transportation, privacy, outside privacy, out in the nature privacy you have. This you lack all of that. Dense urban hives reduce your transportation, your outdoorsness, your privacy outdoors, your ability to just fuck off and walk, and your ability to even leave the building. It's not workable. It's not workable for human psychology. It's not workable evolutionarily. I want to stress this is major. It's a major problem, because this is a major set of needs for humans. For example, one of the top 5 to 7 fundamental human rights is the right to leave, to get the fuck away. Okay? That's that fundamental right to travel, to disperse, to go somewhere. That's very fundamental, one of a half dozen fundamental human rights. And you don't get that. You can't get out of a space that just isn't right for you at the time if you're in a dense urban situation. People are like, oh, well, you can just have bicycles. You can just walk. Well, you can't walk very far. You can't get out of the city. You need to have transportation into nature, okay? Especially private, alone nature. So there's no urban centers, none, that provide adequate psychology and neurochemical environmental cues and need fulfillment for everyone. Some people can get it, but not everyone. And it's structural. You can't give it to everyone because there's not enough resources. You're in a city. You don't have enough nature. So it is possible to do this with large populations in relatively small areas of high population density, kind of. But it's not the way that the solutions are being presented by the pro-urbanists. We have a lot of social democrat urbanists running around. It's kind of a group. It's a whole part of Twitter, the social democrat urban Twitter. It's also on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else. I'm just using Twitter right now because that was where the conversation was. And then people think of this as in terms of people are coming from the suburbs to re-urbanize. Reurbanization is good. Well, that's wrong, because there's two main factors. The first one is that reurbanization assumes or presupposes that urbanized humanity is the default state, and it isn't. It is not. Dispersed human populations in nature, natural environments, are the default. Urbanization is not the default. We've been struggling with this for 10,000 years, and we suck at it. We're getting better, but we suck at it. And suburb growth is not strictly a matter of people fleeing urban areas so they can go back and be reurbanized. Suburbs are often filled by people from rural areas who are looking for better access to things, shopping, restaurants, movie cinemas, jobs, without having to deal with well, small town problems, rural problems, extreme out in the middle of nowhere, like where I live, problems. Okay. Cheap energy, transportation, opportunities for work, opportunities for entertainment. This drives movement into the suburbs from rural areas. When you go from rural to urban, that usually has to do more with a lack of financial resources to live in the suburbs, because suburbs tend to be a little bit on the expensive side, although there's hidden costs to urban living that people don't realize until they get stuck in it. And then you often can't even get out. So one of the examples is that of this whole thing is that a lot of the lower cost, I'd say a majority of lower cost apartment complexes are actually suburban, not urban. Okay, that's actually a really big thing to note. And these apartment complexes have some trees, some grass, some little bit of nature. It's actually a really big deal. So, one of the things to look at is that streetcar suburbs. These developed in the early 20th century when we had streetcars, and the streetcars would run on a line like light rail lines. They were just straight, and you'd hop on and hop off. They went slow and everything. And you had these suburbs where people had gardens and yards and stuff, and they would go out. Streetcar suburbs. These are now considered midtown areas in places like Sacramento or Reno or Carson City or some of the other California cities. San Diego has some. These are considered midtown areas. There's a certain development pattern. I think it's mostly Midwest and Western. I don't think it's as big a deal in the East, because the East was fully populated before railroads, light rail certainly. And so what you've got there is these streetcar suburbs, which are midtown, which are very much kind of lush and green, and they become very expensive places to live. They are not urbanized in that dense urban sense, but they're very desirable because they have walking distance stuff, corner stores and things, but they also have trees and grass and little pocket parks, little corner parks, like 2-lot size parks, and they have all this stuff that was developed long ago when people cared about that stuff more, I guess. I don't know. So these are actually the very definition of suburbs. What we're dealing with now with the modern suburbs, the exurb type suburbs, is a little bit different and a little bit more oriented towards never getting out of your car. And that's a problem in and of itself, So we could use and probably even need some urban solutions that are usable, okay? We need to have the necessary outdoorsness, garden opportunities, walking opportunities, social opportunities, opportunity for life enrichment, and that includes jobs, and independent transportation. It has to be independent transportation. You have to be able to go where you want, when you want. That's actually a big deal. The idea of enforcing bicycles on everyone, which is a really big deal with the Luddite urbanites, that doesn't work. Now, parking your car at the edge of the city or at the edge of your complex and then walking around in the neighborhoods, that's actually doable. There's some stuff there. Like the whole idea of a streetcar wasn't that you didn't have a car, it's that you didn't use the car for stupid stuff like going to work. You used the car for important stuff, like going out and doing your own thing. So, those solutions rely on a lower total density. The housing density might be high in pockets, but you really need more ecologies, more privacy, more outdoorsness. You need cheap energy. This is always a key. You need cheap energy, and you need a combination of localism in your communities, pubs, your corner stores, your bars, your gardens, your parks, your baseball fields, and easy and abundant independent transportation over large regions with safety of use and access. And this is a real key point. Okay, one of the things urban people don't like to talk about, especially the pro-urban people, is that you have to step on human waste if you live in an urban area at this point in the United States, in the first world. So we don't need more dense urban areas. What we need literally are greenbelt cities, interstate cities, garden cities, we need these spaces. We need kind of ring cities or line cities. Interstate cities are a really good example. And I know this video is getting very long, but you're just gonna kind of have to deal. This is a big topic. I can't divide it up into 3 7-minute videos and make it work. So an interstate city is where you take the interstate. You've got 4 lanes of traffic going each way. You have exits every couple of miles. And then down the middle, you have that middle verge. What you can do there is you can elevate a little bit and have a railway section, light rail section. That's actually a really fantastic thing, okay, because people can use that a lot better. But you have to make sure that that is safe and clean, and not overused. This is a problem with a lot of cities that have mass transit. The mass transit is horrible, unsafe, dirty, unregulated, or unmanaged. It's heavily regulated, but it's unmanaged or unsuccessfully managed, and it just sucks. So you have to make that actually work. And then with these exits, you have parking areas. You park, okay, somewhere near your house, you park. And then if you want to go around in your area, somewhere within a mile or two, you can have little spur light rail lines. You can have bike paths. You can have all that stuff. You have mobility scooters, electric bikes, but you don't want to drive your car to the grocery store, to the corner store. Okay, that's not what you're doing. All right. So that's not what you're doing there. What you want to do is you want to park there and then have your community area, and then you go get on the highway if you want to go anywhere further, like Costco. Okay, so anyway, that's basically my takedown of these urbanites, and stay sideways.